What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be breaking down some college wide receiver versus DB one-on-ones from Arizona State's spring practice. So I hope this video helps you guys out, and I hope it could teach you a few new things. But also, fellas, if you're a wide receiver or a quarterback and would like to train with us this offseason, we're going to be coming out to 8 more states this year for 2-day-long QB and wide receiver camps. Next up on our camp tour, we'll be coming out to Honolulu, Hawaii, and Boston, Massachusetts. Both of those camps are completely sold out, but then we'll be heading out to Cleveland, Ohio, Austin, Texas, Seattle, Newark, New Jersey, Denver, and Los Angeles. So if you guys would like some more information, how you could sign up to get one of our remaining spots for those 6 events, check out that very first link in the description below. You guys, we would love to have you out to one of our off-season camps. Let's get started with this video. So this first example here is going to be a slugo route versus this inside shade press coverage look. So how this video is going to go down, we're going to show a couple of good examples of route running, then a couple examples of bad route running, and how you guys can avoid those bad habits and how you guys can practice these good habits in the good examples. So this is a slugo route versus inside shade press, which is a route that a lot of people struggle with. So let's watch what this wide receiver does here. He comes out the ball, gets a little hesitation release, sells the slant for 3, and then is able to get separation over the top to win on this play. So let's talk about it. Anytime that you have to run a double move and you're against man coverage, you would want to treat it like how you would run an actual just single move regular slant route versus that specific coverage. So if you guys had inside shade press coverage, we know that his whole responsibility, this DB, is to take away the inside route, right? So he wants to stop the slant, he wants to stop the dig, the post. So what you would do if you had to run an actual slant is you would attack this DB's outside shoulder and outside hip, try to get him to move off that platform, open up his hips, if you will, so you could slip underneath and run that slant. So that's how you would run a slugo. A slugo is a slant and go. So we have to make it look obviously like a slant, and it would be ran the exact same way. So this wide receiver comes off the ball, he does this little prep step with his front foot. That is not a false step, that is a part of the release. This jab step allows him to push off the line and get some explosion to the outside, which is what will help him sell this type of fade route. Now, this is not normally something that I would teach in a slugo situation because a double move route, longer developing route, we have to get up into the route. We cannot take my time with my release off the line because if you guys take too long, that quarterback's going to be holding the ball, and he could either get sacked or move on to another read. Now, I would assume that the quarterback knows that this is a slower tempo of a release, slower tempo of a play, so you just have to make sure you and your quarterback are on the same page if you're doing this. But please do not take too much time. That is going to screw up the entire play concept, okay? So he comes out, he does this little slide release. Now, this slide, DBs are taught sometimes to sit to the inside anytime that you see a slide release, which is why I maybe wouldn't use this in a slugo situation. You'd be better off, I think, using something called like a diamond release, where you attack the DB's outside shoulder for 3 hard steps, he flips open, and then you slip underneath. Trying to sell that quick fade, right? With speed, with stride, eyes to the outside, that is what will flip his hips. But this DB, maybe this wide receiver has done like a slide and go before and ran a fade. Maybe he's trying to pair the 2 releases together. So he slides to the outside, he gets that DB to open up a little bit, and then he slips back underneath for 3 steps. Now, on a double move route, like a slugo route, whether it's like, an out and up, whether it's a post corner, whatever it is. For those 3 steps that you were selling that first move, there are 3 things that are super important. Number 1, your eyes. You have to look to the inside. A DB is not supposed to be looking at your eyes. He's supposed to be watching what? Your body language and your hips. But you snapping your eyes sometimes can help your hips and your shoulders commit down this slant. So I would say body language as a whole, including your eyes. Number 2, your stride length. So many times because guys struggle with running with some speed on the first part of a double move and putting the brakes on, slipping back out, especially on like a post corner. Guys will take choppy steps. So they'll break to this slant and they won't be running in full stride. They won't actually gain ground. And that's something they teach DBs to look for. Choppy steps means that he's not actually running a slant. Nobody runs a slant with choppy steps. And then lastly, a change in speed is what DBs are looking for. So if you slow down to the first move, that tells him that. But this wide receiver doesn't do it. He sets him up with that slide. He breaks in front of his face with some speed. That's what gets the DB to commit, and that is what opens up for space, downfield. Now, one thing I do want to say, fellas, this is a goal line situation, so we can get away with this here where this wide receiver gets space and he looks back right away. I honestly would like to see his head down for a couple more steps, but it is very tight. We're on like the 10-yard line here. If you're in the middle of the field, know this, that when you get separation, you got to keep your head down and pump your arms to separate and then look for the ball. Do not look back right away because that slows you down and allows the DB time to recover. Goal line situation, different story, but just know that when you're in the middle of the field. So let's play this again, full speed one more time. Great job by that wide receiver attacking to the outside, selling the slant, and then being able to win on that fade ball. Okay, so next example I want to talk about here is this 10-yard out route, like 10 to 15-yard out route, I would say, from this wide receiver versus an outside shade press look. Now, this is a textbook example of how you would do this, and this is a very uncomfortable situation for a lot of wide receivers because a lot of wide receivers, when they're running an outside breaking route, like a 10-yard out, a comeback, a corner, a lot of times on a fade, and sometimes on a fade, you do have to force an outside release. They call it an MOR, mandatory outside release. However, if you guys do not have a mandatory outside release, you need to get comfortable taking an inside release versus outside shade press. His goal is to prevent the outside route. So if your mindset is, I'm going to give him a jab inside and take this outside release, a disciplined DB will not give up the outside. He will hold his leverage and he will force you all the way to that sideline to where you have no space to run the corner, to run the out, to run the comeback, because you need space for that. So off the line, what you would want to do is you would want to attack his leverage to the outside with a quick move like a jab, a wide step, and take the inside release. At the top of the route, that's where you get open, not off the line. So let's watch what this wide receiver does. He attacks him to the outside, he takes the inside release, and he works this throw-by move at the break point. That is textbook. That's as good as it gets, fellas. That is what every single guy in the NFL level will run this route when they're facing that outside shade press look. So again, reason why he doesn't just take off and run to the inside also, reason why he attacks his leverage with this like wide step move is to hold the DB there, is to get him to sit, because we have to keep him honest. Because remember, he's outside shade for two reasons, actually. Prevent the outside route and force you inside to his safety help. So if your mindset also is, okay, he's outside shade, I'm just going to take off and run, he's going to get hands and he is going to force you inside to his safety help. He's going to squeeze you, right? So we have to keep him honest. You have to attack his leverage, move him off the ball, then take this inside release. Now, this is where guys get uncomfortable because everybody knows that when it's man coverage, what's your primary goal? Primary goal is to stack, where like cut off the DB, if you will, to where he is trailing your back hip. And when he's trailing your back hip, you give him a little peek back to the ball. You give him like a 1-2 at the top of the break and get some space. But everybody's hesitant about this inside release because, well, what if this DB's right at my hip and he's playing it well? We got a plan for that, fellas. And that is why the top of the route is more important than off the line. I will say it time and time again, top of the route is what gets you open. Off the line, you keep timing and you keep spacing. So at the break point, you see, all we got to do now is if we're selling fade properly, because that's what you want to do on every route, whether it's a 10-yard out or a 5-yard hitch, you got to try to make this DB think you're running deep. And that comes from having a good pad level, full stride, full speed. And what's that very similar to? That's very similar to the double move. When you're trying to be a salesman, those three things are the most important. You're selling fade, you're selling slant, you're selling an out route. You have to commit your upper body, your pad level. You got to commit your speed and commit with your stride, because that is what will open up the DB. So at the break point, all he's got to do, let's drop my hips. Let's change levels a little bit. Let's sit my hips down on a dime with no indicator. I could use my outside arm to swat his inside arm using something we call a throw by, where you just throw him by, make sure you don't extend and push him in the back, and that'll get you space. And look at this. You have plenty of space for the quarterback to lead us because we didn't force the outside release and get forced to that sideline. That is as good as it gets when you are running an outside breaking route versus outside shade press. So let's play this again, full speed. Great job attacking that leverage, taking what he gives, and then winning at the top of that route. So now, this next example is going to be a bad example of route running. So this is going to be a post route, or like a dig, I would say. It's honestly the same concept. I can't really tell based on what happens here on this play. But this DB's inside shade in an off-man coverage. So your goal would be to attack his outside shoulder and outside hip to flip him open so you could slip back underneath him. Anytime that you have inside shade coverage and he's an off-man, like about 7 to 8 yards, and your route is about 8 yards or more, you want to try to attack his outside shoulder and hip to flip him. If he's in like press coverage, your goal would be to attack his leverage, take the outside release, and stack him rather than attack his outside shoulder and hip. Okay, it's almost like an elongated diamond release, if you will. When that DB's inside shade press and you have to run a slant, you want to attack his outside shoulder and outside hip to flip him so you could slip under and run the slant. If he's inside shade off man and you have to run a post or a dig, it's kind of the same concept. You're just bringing that line of scrimmage to him, okay? So let's watch what this wide receiver does, though. Because when you attack his outside shoulder and outside hip, to get him to flip, you got to sell what? You got to sell fade, right? So you have to do the big three. Commit your body language, aka your pad level. You got to run hard, and you got to keep a full stride. But this wide receiver doesn't do that. Let's watch what he does here. So he's attacking the outside shoulder, but he raises his pad level, he chops his stride, and he changes his speed. And that is an easy play for this DB. Because again, especially a big guy like this, like probably a tight end, a big guy, like if you're a taller wide receiver watching this, you're always a threat downfield. They always are afraid to get beat deep by you, because what does no DB, no safety want to have to do against a 6'4", 6'5" wide receiver? Try to battle for a jump ball. So downfield, they are terrified. But if you can sell it, that's what gets you separation underneath. But this wide receiver ultimately doesn't sell it, or tight end, I should say. So he comes off the ball. He starts out good, but I want you to pay attention to his stride. I'm going to play it full speed because you can really tell. See how his stride starts to change. He comes up here, he comes off the ball first, good stride, and then starts taking choppy steps. Hips and shoulders start to turn to the inside. His pad level raises up. And when you take choppy strides, what happens? Your speed also changes. And when you tell a DB that, this DB is just going to sit, fellas. He is not going to commit. He's not threatened by a fade, and you're going to end up running right into him. So what we would have to do, make sure that when you attack his outside shoulder and hip, we are going hard. We're running right at it, full stride, full speed, and commit that pad level. Do not raise up and do not shorten your steps, because honestly, that is what's going to get you locked up and get that DB to keep his leverage. His responsibility in inside leverage, prevent the inside route. And if we don't make him think I'm running an outside route in that case, he ain't going to move. All right, so now this example here, wide receiver does the right release, he does the right things, but the technique at the break point is poor. As a wide receiver, we talk about this a lot on this channel, that it's not just about knowing the technique behind certain movements. It's not just about knowing how to get in and get out of your breaks. It's not just about knowing how to make an explosive cut. It's also about knowing when to do it, right? You have to know the right situation to do it, but it's a combination of both. So this wide receiver does the right thing. He knows when to do the move. He knows when to drop his hips, but the mechanics are off. The technique is off. And that's what ultimately makes him lose separation and makes him lose this rep. So let's play at full speed. So he comes off, gives a little move, pushes up vertical, puts the brakes on, but see, the brake is a little sloppy, right? And that's what allows that DB to get this play. So let's talk about what went wrong at the break. Because I think everybody can agree that this wide receiver, at the break point, he did a good job selling fade. He's running full stride. He did the right release. He attacked him. At the break point, though, he slipped. That's why he didn't make this cut. But he's not running on muddy grass. He's not running. I think this is grass too. This isn't turf. Nobody can make the turf excuse. Usually everybody likes to, honestly, me personally, I would prefer making cuts on grass because I feel like it's got a little bit more give, especially when it comes down to dropping your hips. So why did he slip? What was the purpose of this? What caused him to drift on this break? And that had everything to do with his foot strike. So you see when he strikes the ground, what hits the grass first? His heel, right? So when his heel hits the grass, that's what causes the slip. I'm sure all of you before have tried to make a cut and your heel has hit the grass first and you have slipped out, right? It's exactly what happened. When you guys make any type of cut, whether you're cutting on a post route, a dig, you got to drop your hips, or it's a single speed cut. It's got to be the ball or the middle arch of your foot, because that is where your power and balance comes from. If you guys are like, let's say somebody's going to push you over, right? You're standing in front of a guy, he's going to push you over. Are you standing on your heels, or are you like grounded? You're grounded, right? Because you're grounded. Weight's distributed probably on the ball, middle arch of your foot, because that's where your balance is. Same thing when running a route, fellas. So when he breaks and he goes heel first, that's where the skid happens. His weight goes back, his feet are out in front of him, and he drifts, and the drift and the slow drop of his hips due to the drift gives this DB more time to recover. If he would have just been able to put the brakes on right now and stop, that would have prevented this. That would have gotten that DB, that would have gotten more separation from the DB and a lot easier of a throw for that quarterback. But again, when you strike on the heel, that's where the slip happens. So what I would tell this wide receiver, and again, I want to make this clear too, it is impossible to think about that when you're in an actual live situation. But let's say I was sitting here with this wide receiver talking about this, that's what we would go work on. We would see this film, we would see that he's slipping, and we would say, okay, we're going to go out to the field and work on this and work on specific drills, emphasizing the foot strike. And when you drop your hips, not reaching outside of your frame and having the heel strike first, more so dropping straight down, changing levels, not reaching out to slow down. So if he would have just been more so like right here, shooting straight down, changing levels, dropping his chin to his knee, not reaching, that would have made it easier to stay on the ball of his foot. And if he would have had a violent drop of his hips, a violent chin to knee drop, and stayed on the middle arch of his foot, he would have had more balance. But the reach causes the improper foot strike, and that's where the slip and the drift come from. Okay, fellas? So I just want to make sure that we understand that. It's not just about knowing what to do, and it's not just about knowing the technique. It's a combination of both, and that is what will make you a good route runner. All right, fellas, I really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to leave those in the comment section below. Always appreciate the feedback. It's always great to hear from you guys. And again, fellas, we are coming out to 8 more states this offseason: Honolulu, Hawaii, all the way to Los Angeles, California. Every single camp, fellas, we will sell out. We are almost sold out for Cleveland, Austin, and Newark, New Jersey. So hope we can see all of you out there if you plan on attending. Again, very first link in that description below. I'll see you guys next time.